You know, we love to bring you guys into these really interesting moments in history.
Mm-hmm.
And today we are going all the way back to February 2025
Oh, wow.
to a meeting between then President Trump
Right.
and Ukrainian President Zelenskyy.
Zelenskyy, yeah.
Yeah, a lot going on then.
A lot going on. This is
Yeah.
really the peak
Yes.
of the war in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And this meeting was really fascinating because it was one of the very few times that we got to see the two of them interacting.
Yes.
And what's really cool about this meeting is that it included a press conference.
Oh, very cool.
So we actually have a transcript
Okay.
of not just the meeting itself, but also
Wow. So we get
what happened with the press afterward.
a back and forth?
Yeah, so I thought it would be really fun to take a deep dive into this transcript.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so the transcript starts with Trump,
Right.
and he is announcing this significant deal
Okay.
that involves Ukraine's raw earth minerals.
And he's talking about all of the benefits that this is going to have for the U.S. economy.
Right, because they're essential for so many things.
Yeah, especially
Technology that we use.
AI,
Yes,
military technology, things that really rely on these resources.
exactly.
And he keeps saying, this is a fair deal.
Oh?
This is a good deal for the American people. American taxpayers are going to benefit from this.
It sounds like he's really selling it like a
Yeah.
business deal.
It's very much like a
Fair
business
enough.
transaction. He's
Yeah.
like, we're going to get this.
We're-
We're going to take this back to America.
Mhm.
It's going to help our businesses. It's going to make us more competitive.
It makes you wonder what his overall approach to foreign policy really is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we already kind of knew that he
Yeah.
approached everything like a business deal.
Yeah.
So maybe this shouldn't be
Right.
surprising.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see it play out on this global stage
Yeah.
with this really important conflict.
Exactly.
Now, Zelenskyy,
Yeah.
he seems pretty on board with this deal.
Hmm.
He even specifically mentions LG terminals.
LG terminals. Okay.
Do you have any idea what that could be referring to?
Well, I think he's probably talking about energy infrastructure.
Okay.
Maybe
So like power plants.
yeah, power plants.
Okay.
Maybe like energy grids, things like
Yeah.
that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and this would make a lot of sense if you think about it. I mean, Ukraine is in the middle of a war, right?
Right.
They are really struggling just to keep the lights on in a lot of places.
Yeah.
So a deal like this,
This would be huge.
yeah, it could really help them modernize their energy sector
Right.
and maybe even, help them become less reliant on Russia for energy.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, we've got this business deal. We've got this potential energy partnership.
Yeah.
And then Trump starts talking about the importance of compromise, peace negotiations. He says something like, you can't make a deal without compromise.
Which makes sense on the surface. If you're going to do a deal,
If you want to get something done,
Wow.
you've got to
you got to
give a little bit.
give a little
Say
taste.
low.
of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he claims that he has this really strong relationship with Putin
Okay.
and that he feels really confident about reaching a deal.
Interesting.
But then Zelenskyy jumps in.
Okay, what does he say?
Oh, he is very firm
Okay.
that Ukraine will not give up any of its territory.
Oh, wow.
He's like,
That's a hard line.
we are not going to compromise on our land.
Yeah.
This is our country.
So he's not interested in giving Putin anything.
Not an inch.
Wow, okay.
And then he goes on to give this really harrowing account of how Ukrainian prisoners of war are being treated in Russia.
Oh, gosh.
He even showed President Trump pictures
Oh, wow.
of these prisoners
Oh, man.
and talked about the brutal conditions that they're being kept in.
That's heavy.
It was really intense.
Yeah, that must have been a really powerful moment.
It was. You could just feel the emotion in the room.
Yeah.
Zelenskyy was not holding back.
He's really fighting for his people.
He was.
It's more than just land for him.
Yeah, he was talking about the very soul of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Their identity,
Right?
their history,
Mm-hmm.
their future.
It's everything.
It was everything, and he made it very clear
Yeah.
that they are willing to fight
Wow.
to the very end
Okay.
to protect their country.
So we've got this clash, right?
Yes.
Between Trump, who wants to make a deal.
The deal maker
Yeah, the business.
meant Zelenskyy,
Right.
who is driven by this deep sense of patriotism and this
Yeah.
need to protect his people.
He's seen what's at stake,
He has.
and he's not going to back down.
Yeah, it really highlights the human cost of this conflict
Hmm.
in a way that I don't think Trump fully grasps.
It's hard to grasp unless you've seen it firsthand.
Right. And this is something that we're going to see play out
Okay.
throughout the rest of this transcript.
I'm fascinated to hear more.
This tension between these two very different perspectives on how to end this war.
Okay.
So
this is good.
Stay tuned, because we are going to dive even deeper.
Let's do it.
Into this fascinating meeting.
Okay. And it's not just about asking for support.
Right.
He starts warning about what could happen if Ukraine falls.
Yeah, like what's at stake for the rest of the world.
Exactly. He's saying this isn't just about Ukraine's survival. It's about stopping Putin from going even further.
Because if Ukraine falls, then what?
Who knows?
Right.
But he makes it pretty clear that he thinks Putin won't stop there. And that's a scary thought for a lot of countries, especially those in Europe.
Especially the ones right on Russia's border.
Exactly. They've seen this before, and they're worried it could happen again.
Yeah. History repeating itself.
Right. And then there's this whole thing about whether Zelenskyy should be grateful for the aid that Ukraine is getting.
Oh, yeah.
Like he should just be happy with whatever they get.
Right.
But Zelenskyy pushes back hard on that.
He's not having it.
No. He's like, we're the ones fighting and dying here.
Yeah.
We're the ones losing our homes and our families.
This is our country.
We're not just going to sit back and be grateful while the world decides our fate.
Yeah, he's really frustrated with how the international community is responding.
Yeah, and he's not afraid to say it.
He even says at one point that maybe the U.S. will end up feeling the impact of this war more directly if Putin isn't stopped now.
Wow, that's a bold statement to make right to Trump's face.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to create some tension in the room.
Definitely.
You can practically hear the air crackle.
Trump gets a little defensive.
Right. He's like, hey, I'm trying to help here. I'm the one in the middle trying to fix this whole mess.
I'm the peacemaker.
Exactly.
And then they get into this weird back and forth about whether Zelenskyy should thank Trump for his efforts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's strange. Trump seems to be kind of fishing for compliments.
Like he wants Zelenskyy to praise him for the U.S. support.
Yeah, especially for the military aid.
Like he expects Zelenskyy to be more grateful.
Right. And Zelenskyy is just focused on getting what he needs to protect his country.
He's not worried about making Trump feel good.
And it's clear that they have very different perspectives on what's happening.
Right.
Trump comes from this business background.
Right. Everything's a transaction.
Yeah. And he seems to think that providing aid means Zelenskyy owes him something.
Like a favor.
Yeah. And Zelensky's like, dude, we're in a war.
This isn't about favors.
Exactly. He's in survival mode.
He's not playing games.
And it gets even more heated when Trump basically says that Zelenskyy is only able to fight because of the U.S. support.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that without it, the war would have been over in a matter of days.
So he's downplaying Ukraine's efforts.
Yeah. And he even brings up Obama's decision to provide only non-lethal aid to Ukraine.
Classic Trump.
I know, right? He loves to compare himself to his predecessors.
And always make himself look better.
Of course.
It's part of his playbook.
But Zelenskyy doesn't back down.
Good for him.
He's like, we've been fighting from the very beginning.
Right.
We were standing up to Russia even when the rest of the world was sitting on the sidelines.
It's true.
And that's when you really see the clash of personalities.
You can just feel the tension.
Yeah.
It's like a boxing match.
With the whole world watching.
And the stakes couldn't be higher.
But beyond the drama, there are some really important issues being raised here.
Oh, absolutely.
About the complexities of war and peace and the role of global superpowers.
It's easy to forget that these aren't just abstract ideas.
Right.
These are decisions that have real consequences for real people.
And we see that in Zelenskyy's descriptions of the Ukrainian people's resilience.
Oh, yeah. That really stuck with me, too.
He talks about how they're finding ways to live, to educate their children.
Even in the middle of a war zone.
It's incredible.
It really is.
It makes you realize that there's so much more to this conflict than just the military battles.
It's about the human spirit.
The will to survive.
The hope for a better future.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
It really is.
It really makes you think about, you know, what the long-term impacts are going to be.
Yeah.
Not just for Ukraine and Russia, but for everyone.
This meeting feels like a tiny version of the whole conflict, you know?
Oh, totally.
Like we see the idealism and the pragmatism and the history all crashing together in this one room.
Yeah, and it's not just between them either, right?
Yeah.
It's like the whole world is trying to figure out where they stand.
Yeah, Europe's looking at the U.S.
Right.
Like, what are you going to do?
Help us out here.
Exactly. And Trump's pushing for NATO to do more.
Which makes sense in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these European countries are way closer to Russia.
Right? They're right there.
You have to be nervous.
Especially Poland.
Oh, yeah.
They've been through this before.
They know what Putin's capable of.
Exactly. And it's got to be tough for Zelenskyy, too.
Oh, absolutely. He's got a whole country depending on him.
To make the right decisions.
To keep them safe.
Yeah, and to get them the help they need.
All while trying to negotiate with Trump and Putin.
It's like he's playing 3D chess.
And the world's watching.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
But that's why this transcript is so interesting, right?
Yeah.
You get to see how it all plays out.
Hey, behind the curtain.
Yeah, and it's not always pretty.
There's a lot of frustration.
Definitely.
Zelensky's not afraid to push back.
No, he's not.
And you can tell that Trump's not used to that.
I mean, he's used to getting his way.
Right. He's not used to people standing up to him.
It's refreshing to see.
Yeah. Zelensky's definitely not intimidated.
And even though they don't really come to any big conclusions,
right,
it's still a valuable look at how this conflict is playing out.
On a personal level.
Yeah, these are real people with real emotions.
It's not just politics, it's personal.
And that's what makes it so compelling.
Yeah. Big picture.
What do we learn from all this?
Yeah, what's the takeaway for our listeners?
I think the biggest thing is that there's no easy fix here.
Right.
This is a mess.
It's a really complex situation.
It's going to take a lot of work to find a solution.
And it's not just about stopping the fighting.
No.
It's about addressing the root causes.
Building trust.
Finding a way for everyone to move forward.
Exactly. And that's not going to happen overnight.
So as we wrap up,
yeah,
what's the one thing you want our listeners to really think about?
I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier.
Right.
You know, can there really be peace without addressing the root causes of this conflict?
Yeah.
And the bigger issues at play?
That's a great question.
It's a question that we all need to be thinking about.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, this is great.
It was really fascinating to get into this moment in history.
Totally.
And as always, we appreciate you listening.
Thanks for having me.